You could accept the fact that this city is headed for a disaster of biblical proportion. What do you mean, biblical? What he means is Old Testament, yeah, Mayor. Real wrath of God type stuff. Fire and brimstone coming down from the skies. Rivers and seas boiling. 40 years of darkness, earthquakes, volcanoes. The dead rising from the grave. Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together. Mass hysteria.
Superstar Billy Graham, a professional wrestler whose extravagant presence, 22-inch biceps, dyed blonde hair, feather boas, tie-dyed tights, and an outrageous gift of gab influenced the style of future stars like Hulk Hogan, Jesse Ventura, and many others. Died on Wednesday in Phoenix, Arizona. Billy Graham, superstar Billy Graham, was 79. The cause was sepsis and multiple organ failure, said a representative who collaborated with Graham on his autobiography. Graham's longtime use of steroids had weakened his bones, required at least 6 hip replacement surgeries, and made him sterile. He also received a liver transplant in 2002 after contracting hepatitis C. If you look at those that came after him, more people have patterned themselves after superstar Billy Graham and become a success in the wrestling business more than probably anybody, said Triple H, the superstar wrestler whose birth name is Paul Levesque, said at Graham's induction into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2004. And when it comes to bodies, there was nobody, and I mean nobody, that could touch the superstar. Superstar Billy Graham. Graham, who was born Eldridge Wayne Coleman, had been an evangelist. Did you know that? He was an evangelist, a bodybuilder who bench pressed as much as 605 pounds, a defensive end in the Canadian Football League, a debt collector, a bouncer, before turning into pro wrestling in 1970. He conceived his outlandish ring character with the help of former wrestling villain Dr. Jerry Graham, who suggested that he dye his hair blonde. Dr. Jerry said it was part of the deal, Graham told the Daily News of New York in 1998. He said, if I was going to make it in wrestling, it would have to be as a blonde. Coleman also adopted his mentor's surname, which was, of course, also of that of Reverend Billy Graham, whom he admired, being an evangelist himself. And for extra panache, he added superstar, which he took from the Broadway musical Jesus Christ Superstar, that also graced his wrestling introduction. When coming down the aisle, sculpted 6'4", 275-pound physique was the centerpiece of a package that also included the blonde hair and goatee, the tights, the earrings, the leather fringes and boots, as well as significant wrestling skills and a boastful style that he borrowed from Muhammad Ali, who himself had lifted it from an earlier braggadocious and flamboyant wrestling star, Gorgeous George. I took some old stuff and made it new, Graham told the Daily News. I wasn't some old wrestler. I was the first guy to look and pose like a bodybuilder, dropping to one knee, do a bicep shot, showing off those 22-inch pythons. Graham found early success. He won the National Wrestling Alliance Tag Team Championship with Pat Patterson in 1971 by defeating Ray Stevens and Peter Maivia, whose grandson is the wrestler and actor Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Graham and Patterson held the title for 8 months, losing to a duo that included Rocky Johnson, The Rock's father. Graham wrestled for a few organizations over his career, but earned his greatest renown with the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, now the WWE. In 1977, he defeated WWF's popular champion Bruno Sammartino for the heavyweight title. Using cunning glean from the years of ring experience, not to mention a dirty trick or two, the Baltimore Sun reported Graham pinned Sammartino, and the referee did not notice he was using the ring rope for leverage while atop of the champion, getting the 1-2-3. In the scripted world of professional wrestling, Keith Greenberg said Vincent J. McMahon, who ran the WWF, and whose son, Vincent K. McMahon, is the WWE's executive chairman as of today, told Graham which day he would wrest the title from Sammartino and which day he would lose it. About a year later, to Bob Backlund. Graham, whose drawing power swelled as he defended the title, tried unsuccessfully to persuade the elder McMahon to let him extend his reign. Billy, my mind's set on Backlund, he told Graham, according to his autobiography. Superstar Billy Graham, Tangled Ropes, released in 2006. Graham retired in 1987 at the age of 44 after his first hip replacement. An indication of the physical toll steroids had begun to take on him. Eldridge Wayne Coleman, born June 7th, 1943 in Phoenix, Arizona. His father, also named Eldridge, worked for a local power company but shifted to a desk job because he had multiple sclerosis. His mother was a homemaker. Graham recalled being beaten by his father, even as his father's body weakened and his grew stronger. I hesitated or stumbled as he beat me down, Graham wrote in his autobiography. So I stayed down. So he became enamored with weightlifting as a youngster. And in 1961, he won the West Coast division of the Mr. Teenage America bodybuilding contest. About the same time, he became a born-again Christian and began to speak at small churches and tent revivals, reciting the sinner's prayer, speaking in tongues, laying on hands. The patter of his sermons later became familiar to wrestling fans as he was interviewed. But his ministry didn't pay well, and he gravitated to football. In 1968, he played briefly for the Montreal team of the CFL. After being released, he worked as a debt collector for Las Vegas casinos and was then considered and offered to wrestle. I guess they asked me because I'm strong and tough and fast. I have the showmanship, he told the Canadian press. I'm handsome. So that makes sense. His wrestling odyssey began in 1970 under the tutelage of Stu Hart, a Canadian promoter and trainer. Familiar with the legendary Hart family, Bret Hart, Hart Foundation, Owen, and a whole bunch of other famous wrestlers there in Canada. When Hart first glanced at Graham, he stared at his biceps. His reaction, Graham wrote, was, God, those are the biggest arms I have ever seen. The man was just salivating, Graham recalled. How can I not love this guy? For the next 17 years under his retirement, those arms and the rest of his body attracted enormous attention, inspiring wrestlers like Hulk Hogan, Jesse the Body Ventura, and others to carry his example to greater heights. There wouldn't be a Jesse the Body Ventura without the in-ring success and trailblazing showmanship of superstar Billy Graham, said Ventura, who was elected governor of Minnesota in 1999, which he said on Twitter earlier this week after Graham's death. Graham, who lived in Phoenix, is survived by his wife Valerie, his daughter Capella, his son Joe, 4 grandchildren. His marriages to Shirley and Madeline both ended in divorce. But after his retirement, Graham became a critic of steroid use that first made then destroyed his spectacular physique. In 1991, he testified in a trial who would be convicted of selling illegal anabolic steroids to wrestlers. Hobbling to the witness stand, Graham testified that he had purchased large quantities of steroids from that doctor in the 1970s and 1980s. They ruined my life, he testified. They ruined my wrestling career. I was addicted to it, he added. When you get off steroids, you get a tremendous depression. Steroids make you feel so good, so confident, make you feel like you can conquer the world. It's almost a plague in wrestling today. It was from the New York Times a few days ago. Superstar Billy Graham dies at 79 years old. Someone who set the standard and raised the bar for many of the wrestlers that were made popular in the golden era of wrestling. Hulk Hogan, the Jesse Body Ventura. Even people like The Rock. It was because of superstar Billy Graham and what he did for the wrestling business. Broadcasting live from the WDCE studios out of the University of Richmond, you're listening to 90.1 FM from the most trusted puppet in media. Reporting since Roswell, I'm Sam Newsman, and this is Saturday morning.